Hi, this is S. Dobbins, Deadman of LRAS. I'm going to do a quick video tutorial here of how to properly shim a gearbox. Now these are some kind of random gears that I had kicking around. They have been broken in properly and have also been polished, just so you can see. I mean, everything's nice and smooth. And I also sometimes, I don't know if you can see it on the camera or not, but there's a slight bevel to the edge that I will put on with just a really fine sanding disc in a Dremel or something to that nature. So pretty much how I always start off with, and I'm sure anybody else who shims, this is also it's the only way to start. Always start off with the lowest gear first, which would be the spur gear. So I have already shimmed this gearbox up to make it easier for the tutorial, but I go as low as possible with the spur gear, with still making sure that I have plenty of clearance over the bearing or the bushing for the bevel gear. So once I know that's right, I'm going to go ahead, put the top, I'm going to stick my finger right in and give it a spin and see how it feels, and try and move it up and down and see if there's any play and up and down play in here. So the goal in shimming is to get everything to spin nice and smooth, have plenty of clearance between the teeth of the gears, and also, you know, to stop any up and down movement, because that's going to create wear spots and in turn weak spots that'll eventually fail. So like I said, this is already a pre-shimmed gearbox. I did it before the tutorial. So I've already got this shimmed. I know that's perfectly fine. Next, I'm on to the sector gear. Again, I try to keep this as low as possible, with making sure that I have clearance over the cutoff lever and the top of the spur gear face. And the reason you want to keep this as low as possible is to keep stress off the tappet plate, because the tappet plate obviously rides directly on top of this sector gear. So again, I give that a spin. Feels pretty good. Do a visual inspection too. You know, if you look from the side, you can physically see how the gear, if you push it over and see how it feels. And then again, throw the top of the gearbox on, you know, have a good look in there, make sure everything's nice and smooth. Seems to be nice, no side to side play. It's alright if you get a little bit of gear noise, a little bit of, I wouldn't necessarily say slapping, but you're turning the gears from the wrong way, so you know, they will kind of sound a little bit different than they would if they were driven by the bevel gear, but not much. If you got something noticeable, any metal on metal sound or anything, you're going to want to stop and take a look. A common thing too, if this spur gear was fine and you know you've been handling it, and now all of a sudden it doesn't feel good anymore, it feels like it's rubbing, 99% of the time you've probably pushed this bearing or bushing up on the other side of the gearbox on this side here, and that will come into contact with it. It's kind of an aggravating thing. You'll learn to just you know, pay attention to that and make sure it's in there. So next thing, again, I like to go not as low as possible but not as high as possible, somewhere in the middle for the bevel gear, so that allows for proper motor adjustment. If you've ever had a gearbox that whines too much, no matter what the adjustment is, it's usually because the bevel gear is shimmed down too low or it's too high. I always, again, hold it right up. Don't be afraid to kind of look up in there and have a good look at it. Make sure everything, you have plenty of clearance between the bevel and the spur gear. So again, just throw the top portion back on. Feel everything. Feels nice and smooth. You know, whatever you got to do to get a good look in there and make sure everything's spinning fine, because there's no sense in shimming it if everything isn't perfect. So hard to get a camera angle in there, but you can see it's nice and smooth. There isn't any slop. If I go on the top here, I mean, it's effortless. Again, you can hear a little bit of noise, but it's kind of because you're not really putting an even load on the gear when you're pushing it with your finger like this, so you do have a little bit of slop in between the sector and the spur gear, but that's not to be worried about. So that's pretty much it. I mean, again, the whole goal is to keep the spur gear down as low as you can, with making sure you have clearance for the bearing or the bushing of the bevel gear. And then the same thing also with the sector gear, is keep it as low as possible so it doesn't rub anything. You just don't want to have any stress on the tappet plate back here, so that's gonna be poor air seal and everything else if the tappet plate is hung up and it's not allowing the air seal nozzle to go all the way forward into the bucking. So pretty much it. That about wraps up a quick tutorial on it. Check the write-up and post up a message or anything like that, anything else that you'd like to see. I got some other ones coming up pretty soon, so enjoy it and take it for what it's worth. Thanks.